In our last lecture, we explored where the angelic souls from Venus were mentioned in traditional esoteric literature. We began in the great Indian civilization, where these beings were repeatedly referred to as the great rishis or the Kumaras. We then segued into the anthroposophical teachings on that period of human development. In that segment, we went even deeper into the great solar spirits of Venus, discovering that they established a system of spiritual initiation through the sharing of their astral and etheric bodies with the developing human beings. In anthroposophy, this sharing of astral and etheric bodies is called spiritual economy. Spiritual economy is the heart of initiation and human evolution. Today, the anthroposophical teaching of spiritual economy is more important than ever, as it illustrates that human beings evolve not through external means or through physical modifications, but through internal development, specifically the merging and attunement of our mind and consciousness with the spiritual hierarchy. In other words, we evolve through the attunement and enmeshing of our energy bodies with the masters who play an initiating role within the spiritual hierarchy. So these 7 great initial solar spirits from Venus began a chain of spiritual initiation through the sharing of their highly developed astral and etheric bodies, or their energy bodies, the sharing of their consciousness. This principle of initiation through the merging of consciousness forms the basis for all evolution and is symbolized by the flame bearers. The flame bearers are also called the angels from Venus, the lords of the flame, and the lords of Venus in theosophy and anthroposophy. Since we are on the topic of beings that come to the earth from a different sphere, let's get a little bit deeper today and explore what a planet really is to humanity according to esoteric science. In society today, the planets are primarily viewed as material objects, things to be mined, colonized, and examined primarily for their physical properties. However, in spiritual science, including the knowledge of our ancestors, the planets were much more than that. They were seen as spiritual beings in their own right and as the gateways to higher consciousness, higher planes, and as the location of higher beings within the spiritual hierarchy. So today the focus is mainly on the material objects in space, and in the past, humanity had a much more holistic and spiritual view of the planetary spheres. In the last decade or so, a new trend has emerged in modern spirituality that seems to reinvigorate this classical esoteric perspective. And this is the idea that alien beings from other spheres visit the Earth. There are often elaborate accounts of their history and their alleged involvement with humanity. These beings, despite being called alien or extraterrestrial, are often portrayed as spiritual beings and sometimes even the creators of humanity. Thus, the emerging trend in spiritual thought seems to be an attempt to return to this more multidimensional spiritual view of the cosmos. Keep in mind that in this new spiritual movement, these alien creator beings are simply taking the position of the traditional angelic hierarchy and the role of the spiritual masters. The Earth and humanity have always been an integral part of the solar system school, or the collective evolution of higher worlds. However, today, the spiritual beings that make up the higher planes are being labeled as extraterrestrials. This has the effect of introducing the spiritual hierarchy as primarily inhuman, alien, and external. And this stands in direct contrast to reality, as in esoteric science, the different levels of angelic beings are direct extensions of humanity. And the planetary spheres or fixed stars they come from are also directly related and interlocked with humanity. There is nothing alien or foreign about them. This shift in perspective from observing the world in an interconnected spiritual way to seeing spiritual beings as aliens and planets as mainly material objects is key. It's a key component in our scientific age. In the scientific age, spiritual materialism rules, and the dynamics of higher worlds are forgotten, or at best distorted into caricatures of their true form. Only the material world is acknowledged, and phenomenon that does not follow materialist ideals is shunned. Looking at space and the planets from a purely materialistic view is one thing. However, the moment we begin to talk about life from other worlds or beings coming from another planet, we immediately enter into a spiritual discussion. And to do that honestly, we have to look much deeper at the cosmos than we currently are. We have to expand our perspective significantly to include spiritual worlds and the spiritual hierarchies that occupy these worlds. In other words, once other kinds of life are involved in the discussion, we cannot look at the cosmos as a purely linear, physical thing anymore. We have stepped into a much larger domain. So, let's dive even deeper into understanding the planets from a more realistic, multidimensional perspective. First of all, a planet is not just a physical thing. It is, in fact, a living being that is evolving through its own cycles of evolution. A planet evolves over time and has a similar kind of life cycle to that of a human being. Further, each human being's life cycle on the planet happens within the planet's life cycle, creating a shared experience. Thus, the planet and the human beings born on the planet are deeply linked developmentally and are in fact inseparable. They are part of the same overall stream or life wave. Also, like human beings, every planet has a physical body or a physical form, an etheric body or etheric forms, and an astral body or astral forms. The planet's physical form exists in the material plane. Thus, the Earth is parallel to the physical body of the human being. This is clear as our body is made up of the mineral kingdom of the Earth and returns to it upon our death. So each planet also has higher spiritual bodies, just like how we humans have etheric and astral bodies. In this way, a planet is actually more accurately portrayed like this. Here we see the physical most dense planet in the center, with its higher bodies surrounding it. Each higher body is represented as another circle expanding outward from the material center, going from most dense to the least dense on the outside. We could portray the human being in the exact same way. The spiritual bodies are portrayed like sheaths surrounding the physical. And what these kinds of images are portraying is the overlapping or different aspects of the same form. In other words, the spiritual bodies technically share the exact same space as the physical body. They just exist in a slightly different condition of consciousness or a slightly different density. When we can grasp this, we are brought to the realization that the cosmos is really a multidimensional place or a series of spiritual planes. The physical planets we see are only the material expression of a higher spiritual body. For this reason, planets are most accurately observed not as singular, but actually as chains of life. This is why in anthroposophy and theosophy and even early Eastern teachings, planets are portrayed as literally linked together in an evolutionary cycle. Here we can see the entirety of a planet. We can see its entire life cycle, which in turn means we can see humanity's entire evolutionary arc as well. If we look closely, we can also see that the material expression of a planet, or the physical manifestation of a planet, is technically its halfway point, or the middle of a planet's overall life cycle. When we can expand our perception this way, we can see that the physical plane is not all there is, far from it, and to only perceive the physical plane creates a limited and distorted perspective, as it eliminates the perception of both the past and the future of a planet, or it eliminates the perception of the past of humanity and also the future of humanity. We see this problem very clearly in today's society that tries to force the entirety of human evolution into the physical life of a planet. This creates an extremely limited scope of time that only acknowledges a fragment of human and planetary development. This materialist perspective is incapable of understanding reality. Taking this concept one step further, we can see that the planets are simply gates to higher planes. We can also see that the planets go through processes of transformation. A planet begins as the finest level of spiritual matter in an astral form. It then becomes progressively denser into a more etheric form. Then, once it reaches its halfway point, it completely materializes into solid matter. By the time a planet manifests in the material realm, it has taken its densest possible form and is ready to die or be transformed by the death process into something higher. So the material realm in esoteric thought is the realm of death, or the realm of rebirth. Once a planet falls into its densest material point, the planet must go through a shift. The materialization impulse that has brought it to this point of peak materiality must be shifted into a spiritualization impulse. So, a higher transformative impulse must be introduced to create a spiritualizing effect to prevent further densification. Once this impulse is introduced, the planet and humanity can begin to spiritualize back out of matter, and humanity and the planet can complete its final 3 stages of evolution. The force that creates spiritualization for the Earth is the Sun. This specific planetary stage of spiritualization after materialization is of course mirrored in human development. Once human consciousness and form reaches its most dense point, a transformative spiritualizing force must also be introduced to the collective consciousness of humanity. In this case, a human being must embody the spirit of the sun. The spirit of the sun must enter a human being so that it is personified through them and thus tangible to human consciousness. Once the spirit of the sun enters the human body, a specific rite is performed within the individual. It takes an exalted spiritual master to perform this rite on behalf of the planet, and it only happens once in an entire planet's life cycle. In occult science, this is known as the mystery of resurrection. Resurrection represents the transcending of matter, or the overcoming of matter. It is the overcoming of the material plane, the transformation of the material plane into spirit. This is the introduction of the transformative impulse that allows all beings on the planet to transform themselves from matter back to spirit and thus complete the last 3 cycles of development. The resurrection mysteries are clearly a key part of esoteric Christianity, but also existed prominently in the Egyptian mysteries. If this particular process is not understood by humanity, human beings risk becoming too entrenched in matter, or metaphorically stuck in the tomb and unable to resurrect or rise, or unable to consciously transform themselves out of the material plane. This is what is truly meant when it is taught that a soul cannot enter the kingdom of heaven unless through Christ. When we stand back and look at the life of a planet, we see a beautiful pattern emerge. We see the mysteries of the universe in motion, and most of all, we see ourselves. We see our own journey in and out of different conditions of consciousness. We see great masters performing transformational rites for humanity, and we see the material world as a shadow of higher worlds. Now that we understand the life of a planet, let's examine the beings that exist on other planets. In anthroposophy, Rudolf Steiner points out that the planetary spheres are not the literal dwelling place of other beings. He said, "In reality, we do not find the outer spheres, or dwelling places of the spiritual hierarchies, so much on the single planets as in the regions which are limited by the orbits of the planets. The spheres of space and the planets are the landmarks for realms of the spatial activities of higher beings." This means that the beings from Venus, for example, are not living on the physical planet Venus. The planet Venus and the orbit of Venus is more of a marker of a higher realm that actually exists in the space between Venus and the Earth. So the beings from Venus are technically from the orbital space between Venus and the Earth. The planet Venus is simply the physical marker of this space. As Steiner mentions, this space is the dwelling place of the spiritual hierarchies. The orbital space of each planet relative to the Earth represents a level of the spiritual hierarchies. This means that the Venusians are not aliens. They're not extraterrestrials, and they're not even technically from another planet. They were the divine human beings, or angelic human beings, that were once part of the spiritual hierarchy. The idea that these beings come from another planet is a materialist distortion that does not acknowledge the objective structure of the cosmos and spiritual hierarchies. Why beings representing the spiritual hierarchies appeared on Earth is because they represented a quality that humanity has to develop in order to evolve. So Early humanity needed to engage with representatives of the spiritual hierarchy to evolve. This is actually how planets evolve. Keep in mind that humanity itself is part of the spiritual hierarchy or the angelic hierarchy. So, interactions with other beings in the hierarchy is really more akin to interacting with other aspects of ourselves or divine human beings that represent a quality that humanity will take on and master further on behalf of the hierarchy. These beings are not foreign or other in any way, but rather a part of a larger system of spiritual evolution that occurs in our cosmos. The times in which they appear and disappear on the planet is according to cosmic law. This cosmic law can be understood through calculations. When we evolve with our planet to our final stage of development, we will be divine humans or angelic humans within the spiritual hierarchy. What we have discussed here today is a very different understanding of planets and spiritual beings than we are taught in our current materialist paradigm, a paradigm which only acknowledges the physical characteristics of a celestial body and perhaps the most shallow spiritual ideas. To understand other planets, we must see them as part of a larger spiritual system. We must see planets as being alive and consisting of precise developmental stages that we can learn and understand. To stay in tune with reality, humanity must also strive to understand their role in their planet's evolution. We must also understand the exact stage of development that we are currently in and what is required of us to evolve. Most of all, we must see beyond the materialist impulse that has hardened itself to become the only reality we are allowed to observe. And only when we do this will we rise beyond our tombs of matter, back into the spiritual planes from whence we came. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please don't forget to give this video a like, comment, and subscribe. Share this video with your friends and family. I'm also completely supported by my viewers, so if you benefit from my work, please consider making a donation or signing up for my membership. Thank you.